New York, tonight you have delivered a mandate for change. A mandate for a new kind of politics. A mandate for a city we can afford. And a mandate for a government that delivers exactly that. On January 1st, I will be sworn in as the mayor of New York City.
Well, I have some breaking news, and it's good news. Really, really good news. Surprising news, as a matter of fact. So first and foremost, let's not bury the lead. Zohran Mamdani has defeated Andrew Cuomo. Again, with more than 50%, a majority of the vote. And the meltdowns that we're already seeing online are absolutely glorious. Now, I assumed he would win. I was a little bit worried because you never want to count your chickens before they hatch, right? But he pulled it off. And he put the final nail in the coffin of Andrew Cuomo's career. Will he go away? Probably not. I think it's going to take a little bit more for him to fuck off. I think he's going to pivot to a presidential run soon. Nonetheless, Zohran Mamdani is going to be the next mayor of New York City. And this is so monumental for a number of reasons. And if he can deliver and actually accomplish even a fraction of the things that he promised, I mean, this is going to be significant for the leftist movement, significant for Democrats even, who are going to want to jump on that bandwagon. And if Democrats play their cards right here and they follow Mamdani's lead, then, I mean, they could be as successful as they were during the FDR era, where they had to put in term limits for presidents because FDR kept winning elections and Democrats had control of Congress for decades. Like, they held on to the House for 60 years. Sam Cedar was talking about this during his live stream of the election. So Mamdani set the blueprint. Now it's incumbent on other Democrats to follow it to make sure that Democrats are winning not just because they're not Republicans, but because people are motivated to support the candidate that they're voting for. And that's really the key here, because if you look at exit polls, people were voting for Mamdani, whereas with Andrew Cuomo, people weren't necessarily voting for Cuomo. They were voting for him because they didn't like Mamdani. And I think that Democrats have to understand that having a candidate that you vote for, as opposed to somebody that you just hold your nose and begrudgingly vote for because you don't like who they're running against, lesser two evils, that is not going to get people mobilized. So you got to get them fucking excited. And that's what Zohran did. So TLDR, do that, Democrats. Make big promises and then fight for them. Now, here's another element to election night that I completely did not expect. Democrats clapped Republican cheeks. I mean, they swept in elections across the country on every single issue. They fucking cleaned house. And this is shocking to me because I wasn't necessarily sure, given some of the Democrats that were running, that we would see these results. But goddamn, this really speaks to how pissed off people are at Donald Trump. People are mobilized and they don't like what they're seeing. But let's get to some specifics. When it comes to California's Prop 50, which would allow the state to gerrymander 5 seats away from Republicans, which was a response to the gerrymandering effort in Texas, that passed almost immediately. It was clear as soon as polls closed that it was a done deal. When it comes to Pennsylvania, they voted to retain all 3 Democratic state Supreme Court justices, which will maintain the Democratic Party's 5-2 majority. In New Jersey's gubernatorial race, Democrat Mikey Sherrill defeated Republican Jack Ciattarelli. In other words, Ciattarelli ate shit. In Virginia's gubernatorial race, Democrat Abigail Spanberger defeated Winsome Earl Sears, the Republican. And in Virginia's lieutenant governor race, Democrat Ghazala Hazmi defeated Republican John Reed. In Virginia's attorney general race, Democrat Jay Jones defeated Jason Mayares. And Jay Jones has Republicans almost as frustrated and pissed off as they are about Mamdani's victory, because Jay Jones was embroiled in controversy because there were text messages that leaked where he was advocating for political violence against his political opponents. And yet voters were like, let's vote for him anyway. So it really speaks to the political climate and just how pissed off Democratic Party voters are. We'll talk about that scandal in a different video because I'm probably going to have to do a GOP Cope compilation in the aftermath of this election because the meltdowns and the tears, there's just too much for me to talk about in this election results video. But I can't not talk about all of that, of course, because I love to, dance on their political graves, so to speak. So we'll cover that in a different video, but nonetheless, they are pissed off at this victory from Jay Jones. On top of that, at the time that I record this video, Democrats in the Virginia State House have flipped a total of 13 seats. You heard that right. 13 seats. And nearly every single county in the state shifted blue. We are talking about a purple state here. And the fact that there was such a swing for this uninspiring Democrat Abigail Spanberger really says a lot about how much people fucking hate Donald Trump and the Republican Party. But moreover, in Georgia, Peter Hubbard and Alicia Johnson both defeated Republicans in public service commissioner races, making them the first candidates to win state-level races in Georgia in 20 years. Now, we did get some bad news in the Minneapolis mayor race between socialist Omar Fateh and Jacob Frey. Unfortunately, Omar Fateh came up short, and he lost to the centrist Democrat Jacob Frey in the race. That, to me, is definitely unfortunate. It would have been the cherry on top, but I think that Omar Fateh is very talented, much like Mamdani, and he's going to be around. So perhaps he runs again. Maybe he runs for Congress, but that is political talent that I think is not going to go to waste. Now, with that being said, the two Democrats, the main ones who won the gubernatorial races, these were very closely watched races. This is a bit of a temperature check on Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and it's a referendum, you could say, on Donald Trump, and this demonstrates that people in these states are not happy with what they're seeing from the White House. But on top of that, you have to look at these specific types of Democrats that won, right? Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill. These are very milquetoast centrist Democrats who aren't proposing radical change. In fact, they were pretty upfront about the fact that they're going to govern from the position of the center. And Republicans, they kind of just tried to make these races about trans issues, in particular, the Abigail Spanberger race. But they won because they're not Republicans. And again, to go back to what I said at the beginning of this video, you want to give voters more, right? You want people to vote not just because they hate the other party. You want them to be inspired to vote for something. So even though these electoral victories are monumental because it speaks to how pissed off people are at the Republican Party, I don't want to overstate the success of Democrats themselves because the party's brand still is in the toilet. They're still viewed by voters as out of touch. So I view this as more of an anti-Republican election more so than a pro-Democrat election. Nonetheless, I think that centrist Democrats, the Hakeem Jeffries, the Chuck Schumers, the pundits of the world are going to try to say, well, you know what, even though Mamdani won, that's not the blueprint for the party. Abigail Spanberger is creating this blueprint in a purple state with her centrist run. And I think they're going to try to do that. But you have to understand that, again, at the end of the day, politics is about getting your base out to vote. Right now, the Democratic Party's base is motivated because they hate Republicans. But 4 years down the line, 8 years down the line, assuming that we have free and fair elections, you don't want them to grow disillusioned again increasingly. You want to keep these people mobilized and make sure they are activated always. And in order to do that, you actually have to deliver materially for them. So if Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill want to really shore up their success here, they have to make sure that they do that for their constituents. And that means they've got to be bold, right? But again, my fear is that Democrats are going to try to use this as a justification for centrism and proof, hey, Abigail Spanberger didn't run a Mamdani type campaigns, and look at where she is. And Majority Report was talking about this a little bit as well. And I think it's a valid concern that we all on the left should have. Having said that, though, putting that aside and, any gripes that I have with the Democratic Party, this is still a really, really good night because it signifies a vibe shift, a substantial vibe shift to where these days where Trump is controlling the culture and it seems like he's just like inevitable and everybody has to acquiesce and succumb to fascism, it's already over. Like, the honeymoon phase is already over, and we're not even a year into his presidency. So my hope is that Democrats, they take this momentum and they don't just bank on like winning elections because they're not Republicans, and they try to funnel all of this energy into a real populist movement so they can create a majority coalition to win elections and permanently defeat fascism. It means they're going to have to shirk the donors and run unapologetically on Medicare for all, on a living wage, on affordability, with specific policy solutions regarding affordability. There needs to be this concerted effort to end our complicity with genocide and wars now that Donald Trump is proving that he's a neocon, much like his predecessors. So I hope that something constructive can come out of this. But even if that doesn't happen, just like the fact that Republicans got their clock cleaned is at least temporarily reason to celebrate, because goddamn, does it feel good to know that Americans are seeing what's happening and they're reacting in the same way that we're all reacting. Like, they have enough common sense to realize, oh, what's happening is bad. Maybe not because, they see how Trump is destroying the Constitution and taking away our civil rights and civil liberties, but because he's been a disaster on the economy and inflation is through the roof and the cost of living is astronomical. So I'm glad that they see reality, and this result, in my opinion, is an obvious reflection of that reality. And I just hope that isn't all for nothing. I hope Democrats use this opportunity to run with the ball. Will they do that? Probably not. But I can dream, right? Either way, great night.
I'm gonna come.
Do not come. Come.
Welcome to the Come Zone.
Come.